friends, welcome to episode 198 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
I am okay. A little off because of, weather still. I can't seem to get, a sinus footing going on or, headspace within my head cavity.
Yeah.
It's 30, it's 60, it's 50, it's 20,
It hit 60 today.
Yeah.
It will be 38 tomorrow.
Yep.
I think it's going to be in the 20s the day after, and then I think it's going to be back up to the 50s this weekend.
Yeah.
So,
and I had to wipe clean the headspace from yesterday because we got to... we have a show coming up with some co-hosts, or... it's not quite an interview. We have people joining us in the show.
Guests, yeah.
We have some guests.
We have some knowledgeable guests,
And we got to meet them yesterday and go through some stuff. So you'll all hear from them in a couple weeks. So we're excited about that too. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, Knox, winter weather warning issued.
It's 60 degrees. Winter weather warning. Yep.
Welcome to Michigan. Yep. So. But, so, we didn't have any events this weekend.
Didn't we?
We had your game. Okay, never mind.
How soon we forget.
Dude, it's been a long 3 days.
It has. And to be honest, I almost needed the reminder myself.
No, it's true. I honestly, it felt like it was a week more ago. So... The twist for me this week was you basically saying, I don't have my scenery ready. Can you get the digital map going? I was like, yeah, sure. And then not realizing that several of the players had never seen it. Because they're not part of my game.
So you just casually saunter out with a 38-inch flat screen TV that you've converted into a digital map board. All stained and bracketed on the end and stuff like that. And
they're all like, holy crap, what's that?
2 or 3 of our players are like, what is happening right now?
No, it turned out really well.
Oh, and, by the way, this is the thing I have now, yeah.
Yeah, I just do this. I do this thing.
No big deal.
And, but your maps worked out perfectly. I think there was no problem with that whatsoever.
Oh, yeah,
I think really
that worked out good. I already had the minis painted from last time, and... I thought the game went pretty well. I thought it went pretty smoothly.
Yeah, no, 100%. I thought it. I thought knowing what I knew about the story.
Yeah.
At least the 5,000-foot overview that we had done. I felt that it, from a storyteller's perspective, I thought it went great. Mm-hmm. I thought all the players hit all the beats and moved through it very comfortably.
Yeah, definitely.
And like all good Savage World games, you don't know how the players are going to want to react to the scene, whether it's they're going to want to do something tactical, or they're just, dramatic task is great. Let's just keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
And so much was dramatic task.
If they had decided that's fine, that would have been perfectly fine with me. But I kind of put it up to the group. I was like, do you guys want to get into a tactical combat here, or do you want to just kind of do this in role play and do it as a dramatic task sort of thing? And enough people were like, you know what, we haven't done a tactical combat in a while. Let's try that out.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, that's kind of my vote too, because I went through all the trouble of painting these minis. I want to use them.
Exactly. And at the same time, most of the adventure up to that point had been a lot of talkie.
Yeah.
And specific individuals doing a lot of recon and check back and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, some of us are literally sidelined do-do-do. But we're all part of the story. We're all still adding to the game and doing things to make it feel active.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a beautiful thing. And it never takes long. Dramatic tasks really don't take that long.
No, they don't. I mean, and to me, I think they're the sweet spot of that fast, fun, furious gameplay that Savage Worlds likes to put out there, because you get to use a lot of your skills and stuff like that in some fun and creative ways, but the outcomes are all narrative. You don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of, do I hit him? Okay, how much damage do I do? Do I cause any status effects? Anything like that. It's just, it moves the story.
Well, and not only that, but the player's choice of investment within those dramatic situations of how much they choose to describe is up to them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the beauty.
Exactly.
So you as a storyteller can then choose to step back and just let them narrate it.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, exactly. And now I've got a lot of good players at my table that like doing narration. They like a heavily narrative game and stuff like that. So allowing them a canvas to paint upon, makes everybody at the table happy.
Micro roles, macro narrative, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas with D&D, you're tactically trying to figure out what it is, and so you're doing all of this role theory. A few rolls to try and figure things out, or re-rolls depending on, whether they've got luck or some other control surface that's helping them change their rolls, and then outcome. And it just eats up so much. And so it is wonderful to enjoy those moments when you can have them and just move on. Still have it feel like an engaging story versus you just saying like, yeah, this is what happens. Because you guys are professionals. It's like, okay, I didn't get to do anything. You just told me it worked.
Right. I mean, I'm happy that you made my character the damn hero of the day, but like, I don't feel like I interacted with that at all, and that's kind of what a role-playing game is, you know? So we finished up playing that, and then I fell asleep at I would say a pretty reasonable time Saturday night. I didn't wake up until noon on Sunday. Sean said he peeked in on me at one point, and he said, you were just so exhausted from the day before that just like, and you looked so peaceful. I just let you sleep.
No, and I think I was trying to put it to words like, because you always say there are times when you come to storytelling where you're exhausted and you leave with energy, not like more mental and internal energy, because you're still exhausted from the day. It's still a lot of talking, it's still a lot of mind work, but spiritually you're lifted, and it takes a load off of you too. You've stepped through that section, if you will.
Yeah, I've been and kind of continue to be in a bit of a mental funk.
Yeah,
last couple of weeks and stuff like that. I think I've talked about it a little bit on other shows and whatnot. There's just some bleak stuff going on with the plight of transgender people here in the United States, and especially in the UK too. And it seems like it's all over. And honestly, it's wearing me down a lot. Yeah. And just there was another thing that happened in the UK over the weekend, and just kind of broke me. So I really, coming into game, I was like, all right, I've got one spoon and one spoon only. Yeah. And I'm going to gamble it on a day of smiling and laughing and playing with my friends. Yep. And I did come out of it physically exhausted, but spiritually refreshed.
Which gave you your Sunday.
Yes,
which is lovely. You got to have those moments. You got to have those.
So it was pretty nice.
Yeah. So today's show, I think, is interesting in the sense that, like, we've been doing our 202s, we do our system spotlights. Sometimes we literally label things DM rant. Yeah. And this kind of isn't. This is kind of sits in an odd place for us, but at the same time, I think is really important to people who are just stepping into storytelling and who are looking at, like, role playing in general, whether they got to it through D&D or some other means, how this really fits into their life. One of the things that I was going to go find, and I have it stashed somewhere in my digital archive. I was going to look up Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Repair.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because there's some quotes in there that I thought would have been kind of appropriate for today, and like how life alters as you perceive it through different lenses, whether it be work, whether it be a hobby, whether it be different things, and you gain different skills that are completely inobvious.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's the to take Karate Kid, it's the wax on, wax off. You're waxing a car, but you're also learning how to do parries effectively. It's those types of things that you don't obviously take into it, and it's kind of that's where my brain was at for this show when I first came up with the original idea of it, is how much of this have we changed as individuals, you and I, over all these years that came from gaming.
Oh yeah.
What skills, what are the false skills that we don't even think about,
And it's funny, this is like, there are some shows that get added to our itinerary, and especially like sometimes when you kind of come up with your, like, I would say off the wall, like,
no,
if I
really
say off
do.
The wall, it
fine.
makes it sound derogatory. But
not
like,
in the least.
I don't mean it that way,
Well, just oftentimes I present them to you in an exceptionally off the wall kind of way, and you have to like rename it to me.
You're like, what if we talked about this one little niche psychological thing that you see in a small percentage of players? And I'm like, you mean the phenomenon of this happening? Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Cool, put it on the list, you know?
And then,
yeah, I guess we could have a discussion about that. And then I sit down when that show comes up, and I'm like, how am I going to talk for an hour about this? And then I start just jotting down, quote-unquote, a few notes on the sheet, and I end up with like a 5-paragraph essay about, you know,
well, and what's funny is often you'll drive. Like, you start out light, it gets thicker and thicker, and then at the bottom, like, by the time you get to your last points, you're like, oh, like, and it becomes a DM rant in a way. But, or you come to an epiphany, and I love that. I love that about our research. I love that we can do that in our show, and we can have these moments.
I want to ask you a question, actually, at the kind of the onset of us talking about this topic of, like, how storytelling has affected our real life and given us like
skill sets
to work with and stuff like that. So I mean, when I was growing up, my mother especially, I can hear her voice in the back of my head. It was always like, you know, I was playing games instead of doing something useful. You know, like you could be you know, creating something, or you could be studying something, but instead you're playing all these damn games. Did your parents ever?
So I'll
kind of give you that?
I will say this. My mother wasn't appreciative of video games.
Okay.
She had problems with my attention on Nintendo and things like that. When it came to computer games, she never did. Because she saw that I was learning technology. And like I was doing things that to be able to play a game often that she just didn't fathom. And I was clearly getting skill sets from that. When it came to tabletop gaming, never a single question. Never a stop point. It was social. I had friends over. We were in a safe environment. That was oftentimes under her control.
Yeah.
Because it was in our basement, which was... my parents were party people. We had a nice basement for it. We had a big open space, all kinds of comfy couches. So, like, having the people over for a weekend gaming all weekend long in the basement, yeah, it smelled a little funny at times. But, like, I would set things up. I would have a nice event. I would, you know, have my friends over. I would clean up. She loved every aspect of that.
My parents too, by the way.
Yeah, that part of it specifically.
My parents always keep the fridge. Like we had a fridge in our basement, and like they would keep that stocked with like pop and you know by like Mountain Dew and Pepsi. Which like they didn't drink,
right?
You know, so like you knew that there was only one group of people they were buying that for,
right?
And like they would go out and they'd buy extra like chips and dip and salsa and stuff like that and whatnot. And at one point I was like, Mom, like you don't mind, like you don't have to go out and buy all this stuff, like. What is with that? And she's like, no. Like, look, you're at that age. You could be out there partying. You could be drinking. You could be rabble-rousing, getting into who knows what. But instead, you bring your friends here to our basement and play make-believe with colored dice.
Yes.
So if all that costs us is a case of Pepsi and a bag of nachos, like, yeah, sure, by all means. That's.
I think the second part of it was my mother, kind of. By sidestep trade, because she didn't start out this way, was kind of an educator. And she always saw educational tools in everything. Training, cross-training, you know, working with... When she moved in from being a nurse into policies and procedures, and then eventually into education. She taught at Wayne for a while, and... She had a whole breadth and a different way of looking at things, and she'd always feed stuff to me. Like, we would talk about the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and, like, I knew these things as a kid, right? At the inception, before the books became popular, like, I had all those things. And I think she saw that gaming was an aspect of that. Role play was just a comfortable way of experiencing things in different ways that weren't dangerous. Not to mention that later on in my life, I recognized that my mother was a wild child at times, and she saw that I wasn't going to be. And so, in a way, she was comfortable with me not becoming her. You know, and doing those things, I think there was an aspect there that she was like, you know, I'm okay with this. This is good education, you know.
Your mom cracks me up so much because she's like, well, used to be a nun, became a nurse, right?
Yeah, oh God, it's like we could do a whole show on my mom.
But like every so and then when you're talking to her, you just get this little glimmer in her eye, and you just know somewhere somebody voted her most likely to throw a Molotov cocktail. You know, and not in the like destructive way, but in the like righteous anarchist way of like.
I don't know if my mother would ever go that far, but definitely in the sense of like, I remember the first time I downed a Guinness in front of her. I did a car bomb basically in front of my mom, and I just watched her eyes stare at me for a second, like not in the like total like, oh my god, I can't believe you just did that.
Oh,
more
his
of the like
innocence is gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was more of the, oh boy, he could be like that. Okay. But like, dear God, I love my mother, and she can be a party animal when she wants to be. But she doesn't show that side to anyone.
No.
And but she is a wonderful, wonderful woman, and I am a better person today because of her. I love my mom dearly.
Yes.
So
maybe I misspoke. Not most likely to throw a Molotov cocktail, but like most likely to chain herself to a tree to stop a bulldozer.
But I think if the reason was there, the conviction is definitely there.
That's what I'm saying.
My mother definitely has that conviction.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah, my mother has made statements,
and just that dash of rabble-rouser.
Yeah, her conviction is strong. My mother's conviction is exceptionally strong. Yeah. So I will say that there are stories, but I will say that much.
So when did you start storytelling?
So my storytelling started when I was in middle school. So what, like 12?
Yeah.
That seemed about 12, 13?
12, 13. It's about the same age for me.
Because
I wrote down 14, I think, but it's somewhere between 12 and 14.
Mine, I can definitely say it was middle school because it was walking home from middle school is when I got my first book. Mm-hmm. I was exposed to it before that by my cousins who were D&D first edition and second edition players. And they learned basically going into college. Mm-hmm. And so I had that experience with them. Making my first character happened then, but I really didn't get to play other than like messing around with them at like holiday events.
Yeah.
Until until middle school when I formally did it. So I had experience with it, and I even had some digital experience with it way early on because my dad was in computers, and a lot of the early computer games, there were quite a few of them that were role playing. They weren't like tabletop style.
Usurper, Trade Wars.
Right.
ASCII based, like dungeon crawlers almost.
Yeah. And so those kind of gave me a gateway of a little idea of even the text-based RPGs where it was like, it would give you something in...
Zork.
Yeah, original Zork, and the derivatives thereof. Yeah. So I had all of that coming into it, so it gave me a lot of energy of like, yeah, I could do this. Which is why I didn't start with fantasy. I started with space-faring anime, you know?
And, same with me. I started with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because that's what my brother played with his Boy Scout friends.
Yeah.
And so I got into that, and then I want to say shortly thereafter, I tried running it for some of my... And I can't remember if it was junior high or if it was high school at that point, but it was either like at the latest freshman year of high school. So 14-ish or so. I remember my first... storytelling experiences there.
Yeah.
Running TMNT. I tried running a little bit of Shadowrun 2nd edition.
Yeah. No, I remember that very, very vividly.
Yeah, but again, like I never ran D&D. Like D&D was something that my band buddy played.
Yeah.
I played a little bit of it, didn't like it, didn't understand it, so,
I played D&D 2nd edition, 3.54 going up from there.
Yeah.
I played briefly played Battlemaster. So there was a number of fantasy ones that I played. There were some games that I don't remember what the mechanics were or which system it was, but I did play like a couple sessions with people.
Now let me ask you this too. How much then of would you say of your original like gaming, like back in those like early teens days, was storytelling?
Almost all of it.
Almost all of it. From the word go, you've been
a storyteller. Yeah, I was behind the screen. My fantasy games were the ones that I often played a character in, but 90% of my gaming, I was a storyteller.
Yeah.
Like, it just, nobody else knew to do it, or knew how to do it.
Yeah, I'd say it was probably 50-50 for me up through high school.
Okay.
I was not the storyteller for our Battletech game. And that was the one that we played the most of, arguably.
Yeah, honestly, I think it was after high school that I really got to enjoy other games. Because I started going to conventions. I started meeting a lot of other people who were storytellers. I got to play in World of Darkness games and LARPs and things like that. So that's when I got to play more and experience more of the other side of it. But yeah.
Played a lot of World of Darkness in college. But
it was really popular at that time for both of us.
Yeah, it really was. Really was. It was very in vogue. And then... I want to say I ran 3rd edition D&D when that came out.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So on that same regard, so starting out as middle schoolers who were doing this, kids on bikes.
Kids on bikes, right?
Did you, not knowing now, looking back, taking the lens and looking back at that time,
yeah, sure.
Do you think that you gained immediate skill sets that you applied and just didn't recognize you were applying them? In middle school.
I really do think I did, yeah.
What do you think was the first thing that, like, if you look back at the lens, what was the first thing that you really think came out of that?
You know,
because I know mine is actually our first thing I have here.
So for me, like, it's funny because I learned the skill and only applied it to the role-playing game because I was an absolute crap student.
Okay.
I was an absolute crap student in school. And I probably undiagnosed ADHD.
Sure.
But I don't have a formal diagnosis on that. But anytime anybody goes like, "Oh yeah, this, and this are like strong ADHD,"
sure.
You know, I'm like, "Yeah, that's absolutely me," and something that's been plaguing me all of my life. But that said, a lot of like honestly study techniques and stuff like that. Like I learned. There was a day when I could quote you the entire armament of like whole battle mechs, whole lines of battle mechs. You know, like, oh, what's on the Banshee? Well, that depends. Are you talking about the 3S, the 3D, the 5S, which is the upgraded, you know, et cetera, you know? And then I could tell you all those variants and stuff like that. That's, I think, that and like,
your recall skills and your memorization.
Yeah, but between that, organizational skills and I would say a little. Public speaking probably is another thing that.
See, that was the one that did it for me. Was that in middle school? I don't think I would have gone into some of the class. By 8th grade, I had classes of choice, and I don't think I would have taken the classes of choice that I had if I didn't have a confidence in doing speaking.
Yeah.
Or even some of the writing stuff. Like when I went into 9th grade year of high school, I was pretty confident. I knew a lot of people, but I was already confident with public speaking. I had no problem talking in front of groups. Like as long as I knew something about the topic, a glancing edge of it, I could work with whatever else. Like I could get enough data points to make it sound like I knew what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Like I had the sales down because and that's funny about that public speaking is because like I started work with my father very early on, and so I was dealing with peers who were, 30 years older than me or me in a business sense, and I had to feel confident speaking with them. And I think gaming really gave me that confidence because in gaming I had to be a person 30 years older than me talking to people who were adventurers.
Oh, sure.
So you have to come up with those. You have to pull that information from somewhere, and that je ne sais quoi of being older,
right,
and having confidence. It gets built, and as you do it more, it applies in other places.
That's one of the great things about storytelling. When you have to pull out a bunch of different NPCs, over the course of however long you're storytelling for. It forces you to put yourself in the shoes of a bunch of different people.
Yes.
And you build so much empathy, and you build such a more rounder personality, just because you get to practice in a very safe environment all these different aspects of yourself that you might not even be comfortable with. But like, if you can play one for 5 minutes at a time, every so and then at a game, like it's in there somewhere.
And I dare say that it is better than theater in teaching that, whereas in theater you're being forced to do it and perfect it in front of people who are either going to cheer or jeer. And in tabletop, everyone's going to laugh regardless. Well, also, whether it's funny or whether it's hilarious or whether you're doing a terrible job at it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It's entertainment in a small venue, and they're going to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And so in that, you have a much tighter loop between trial and success and failure that you can just move through. And I think that really, that was the other part about communication is that you get to practice those things, like you said, practice that empathy, practice that determination, that confidence when you need it. And then when it comes to applying it, like in theater, like if you move from role-playing to theater, which is something I did do. I did a lot of musicals. I worked on stage. I had to have confidence with other things. It came natural. So my evolution of myself expanded where I was hanging out with people much older than me. Like when I left high school, there really wasn't anybody in high school that I still hung out with. Everybody that I hung out with was at least 5 to 7 years older than me. And that carried through most of my life. Yeah, everybody just assumed I was older at all times. Now I kind of look like I think I've caught up with the age. But at the same time, like, I still have friends who question how old I am because they remember, like, you've done all these things. And it's like, yeah, because every step led me to another thing that pushed me further into it and deeper into it. Yep, and yep. I will say that tabletop had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other big aspects for communication too, that like, and so not just interpersonal communication learned from like in-game stuff.
Sure.
You know, but I mean, how often do we talk about how you have to kind of be the facilitator for your table?
The ref and facilitator, I would say both of those things.
People's personal needs, interpersonal conflicts at your table, doing the scheduling.
So what you're saying is you have to be a manager.
What I'm saying is you have to herd cats.
Yeah, and that's the truth. That is the truth, because it teaches you management skills.
It does.
Right there. No matter how you look at it, you are a manager.
Yeah.
Whether you accept it or not. And a lot of times, the few people that I talk to who are active managers of either service style, in their life, like whether they worked at like in food services or retail or something, often said that gaming as trying to organize gamers was harder than managing people that you paid.
Yeah, because the people you pay have to be there to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But you're kind of asking the people that you're playing with, can you carve this out of your schedule?
Yeah.
You can't just like fire them out of your game.
No. I mean, you can, and sometimes you should.
Sometimes you do.
But that whole that whole juxtaposition, you don't recognize all of the pieces. Scheduling's a huge thing. Accommodations for people's how they're doing day to day.
Yeah.
Is a huge thing. Accommodating them because they're often your friends and you know what's going on in their life.
Yeah.
You think about that while you're doing everything else.
Yeah,
everything from just accommodating the framework of timing everything to what's going on in the game. Like, we often have had discussions of like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this in game. Do you think X is going to be okay with that because of this situation that happened in their personal life?
Right.
We've done that so many times. And you do that naturally without recognizing how much that applies to so many other aspects of your life.
Yeah.
Like, and when you do make the connection, your brain goes, oh, I felt called out, a little bit.
I absolutely took a lot of those skills when I was a manager at my job.
Yeah.
Had a team of I want to say 14 people under me at one point. I'm not in that position anymore, but it wasn't because of the people. I liked my team. I didn't like the management that I worked for.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not going to mention any names or anything like that. But
sure.
It was but the team was great, and yeah, I mean, knowing all these skills of like how to kind of coordinate people. The fact that I had built all that empathy for people who are on my team, being able to look at them as a person, treat them as a person, and make sure that their personal needs are being met, as well as making sure that we're all still focused on the task at hand,
Right.
Yeah, absolutely something I picked up being a storyteller.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, which kind of leads us to conflict resolution. I see Knox in the Box in the live chat is asking, like, I suppose you learn how to fire people through TTRPGs. I don't know that I would ever get used to doing something like that. I don't think I would want to get used to doing something like that.
No.
But at least understanding how to talk to people and how to resolve conflicts is absolutely something you practice at your tables. Yeah. Because ultimately you're a group of people all gathered together for a task.
Yeah.
You know. And like in game, you're looking at what available resources you have.
Yeah. As a player, definitely.
As a player, and trying to find a workable solution to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like you've got your PCs and your NPCs,
Mm-hmm.
basically just HR assets.
Yeah, very much so.
Right? Like, how do we leverage the people we have to accomplish the task? Whether that task is raiding a dungeon or clearing a work queue or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Inventory and material asset management.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like, how many healing potions do we have? What did we do with that immovable rod? You know, et cetera, et cetera. Does our drone rigger have a sniper bot that he can put up above us? You know, with thermal imaging or whatnot.
Yeah. How can we get better eyes on the situation?
Exactly. Do we have a shaman on our team? You know.
Yep.
And then, like, spell slots and abilities are expendable resources.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would damn near say that's working within a budget.
Yeah. No, I think that's very much so.
Making sure that you measure out assets and spend them appropriate to, you know, proportional problems that you need them to solve, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it sounds funny, but these are all things you're learning from these games.
No, very much so. And I think a lot of the stuff that comes out, like you were saying with conflict resolution, I'm going to roll back to that for a second.
Yeah.
Like, now that we have things like X cards, lines, veils, we have terms for the things that, like, we had to manage without those terms as middle schoolers and high schoolers who didn't even know how to do it. And I dare say a lot of the college people that I played with still didn't understand emotional capacity and, you know, knowing where lines and consent were with emotional trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was always a terrible thing. I mean, we talked about World of Darkness. World of Darkness was basically like sexy LARP.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to put it that way, but
Yeah.
and the people who were involved in any of those know what I'm talking about. And there was a certain level of consent of understanding what you were getting into, but at the same time, like, I also dare say that the Rules of the Night, the live-action mini-book that basically everybody had, kind of had some really neat moments in the book that talked about keeping that distance.
Yeah, yeah.
Having that consensual, you know, thing there when it talked about certain power sex, especially like domination and things like how to handle those situations in a LARP situation. And you're like, they didn't go so far as to set lines and veils in an obvious way, but it was teaching you that. And there's a certain transference that comes to understanding, like, the boundaries of HR, understanding your distance between you and other people in your life.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they may not be your friend, but you may have to work with them for a period of time. And in that, how do you know where a line should be drawn, and can you even communicate that
Sure.
openly? And the answer is you can. Here is how. This is a healthy way of saying, like, I go this far and no further. You know? And I think now with some of these tools, we have a direct way of being able to communicate that.
Yeah.
And I love that. And it empowers people even more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
Absolutely. And I think, you know, resolving accessibility concerns is another big part of that too. I mean, not only do we have our things like our X cards, our lines, our veils, and really just, I suppose, even just the idea of bringing to the forefront the idea that discussing boundaries and comfort levels and consent in gaming, I mean, those aren't ever discussions I had back in high school and college.
No, no.
I don't know that I had the language to do it. I wouldn't have thought to do it. I mean, I would have understand if somebody started having, like, you know, PTSD flashbacks, that was a bad thing that I needed to stop, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you, you know, I wouldn't have been able to have an adult conversation about it.
Well, I would say an emotionally adult conversation, because again, you hadn't dealt with it enough to be able to even create an imprint there.
Oh, back when we were young and innocent.
But I think under your accessibility, I think another aspect of that role-playing definitely helped me with was understanding the positions of accessibility.
Yeah.
we would see situations where characters, we'd be given options of, you're blind, you're deaf, the simple, obvious, accessible issues. But then as characters, we experienced through other players their limitations that they set forth for themselves. I remember one player that I was in a game with who, in his backstory, made it very clear that he came from a broken, abusive home. And I didn't think about it much at the time, but it helped me understand there were places that I couldn't take that story, and at the same time there were places they very much wanted to take their story to be able to achieve a change in their own personal state. Be able to experience things that they wouldn't normally be able to experience.
Sure.
And those kinds of moments are the ones where I think accessibility in a different term, and this is where I'm coming with this one, is accessing those emotions and those moments and being able to have that in a healthy way, and I would say kind of a therapeutic way, is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there is nothing wrong with somebody who may have had a limitation, or was dealing with something traumatic, like they just got done in a car accident, and they're still broken and going through therapy and everything, but they want their fighter to be whole. And not have to, and constantly feel in control and have a bit of a power fantasy because they physically can't right now.
Sure.
They're struggling through it themselves.
But at the same time, though, you've got players like very much like myself, and I've talked about this before, is who come to the table with a character concept where they're trying to work something out. The first female character I ever played, I actually played Ravana in another like 3rd edition game or something like that for like a handful of game sessions. When I was still presenting male. And before I had really ever figured out what was going on with this, with my gender identity in general, I didn't have the words to describe it. I didn't know what I was feeling, but like I thought a female character would be really cool to play, and thought that I felt really like close to the idea of it. But I found that in playing her, it felt really good to be referred to as a woman. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I should probably examine those feelings. Huh?
And I think I'm going to step actually around with this one a little bit. For me, is that as a storyteller and improving so many different things, we have to constantly adapt to that. So, like, we have a vision of what we want to put into the game as an NPC or something, but if it doesn't fit with the group, we suddenly have to improv a totally different character. Because, like, maybe everybody's kind of thrown a Western twang to everything, and now the big city guy doesn't make much sense to bring into this, so now you have to throw a Western accent on it, and maybe that changes your vision of the character, and allows you to quickly make a change on that.
Where's your character from? New York City? New York City!
Exactly, those kinds of things. But just those kinds of quick changes starts with that adaptation and makes us comfortable with that adaptation. I think that was one of the big things that made it easy for me to get into doing theater and music in high school much more comfortably, because it didn't matter what character role they gave me. I didn't care. People were like, oh, I want to be this person. I'm going to try out for this role. I'm like, how about you just see which one they give you? Because they're going to find something that's going to fit you. Oh, no, I really need to play this character as the character I fit the best with. And it's like, okay, I get that, but then in the back of my head, now that I look upon it, I'm like, the reason why I was okay with anything was because I could literally play anything. It didn't matter to me. And it came to a culmination that when I was in my junior year, I had a senior who was in an AP class come to me and say, hey, we need to do a theater, like a 5-minute scene, and I want to do Taming of the Shrew, but I want to do a role reversal. Would you do it with me? Would you come into the class and do it with me? It would just be in front of the class. And I was like, yeah, you're cool. I would totally do it. She was like, you're serious. You'll put on a dress and walk into class. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
I'm an actor.
Okay. Literally, it's a scene. It's how the scene is going to go. And we practiced for weeks and then pulled it off. And it went so well. And there were like 4 other students who did an incredible job that they wanted us to do it at night for the parents.
Yeah.
And for other people. And I was like, sure, why not? And they're like, she's like, you seriously are still okay with doing this? Like, you literally were standing in the hallway in a dress alone. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And? Like,
it's a piece of cloth, first
Right.
off. Second off, I'm an actor. I am supposed to take on different roles.
But it's high school.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, I look at myself and like, wow, I was way more mature than most of the people in that room.
Yeah.
But I got an applause out of everybody because they lost themselves in the scene because
Well, yeah.
we had accepted what we were doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that comes right out of this.
Oh,
that
yeah.
For me, that 100% being able to watch my player, like, take that last breath after finishing something and watch the players just kind of absorb it and accept it. And you're like, they're all silent because they're in the scene with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's one of the joyous moments you can have.
Yeah.
You know, that like, I'm lost in the movie in my mind. And that's what comes out of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's also feeding upon that joy, you know. But being able to just quickly shift and accept these things, I think is enough. And one of the things that you brought up, I want to say last week near the end of the show where we were talking about systems, is that we do go through a lot of systems.
Yeah.
I remember going through, let's say I went through a couple different Palladium mechanics.
Yep.
World of Darkness was a complete flip from that.
And each World of Darkness genre had its own kind of subsystems.
Yeah,
like,
completely.
A lot of it was, attribute plus skill worth of D10 die pool to hit a target number.
Right.
But, like, what subsystems did you have in there? What powers were you working with?
And, like, going from Battletech to Shadowrun for you.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's dice pools in very different ways.
Well, I mean, Battletech is 2d6.
Right.
It's 2d6 for everything.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, then you go to Shadowrun, and it's like, oh, okay, 2d6 is just not going to cut it. I need 14 d6 minimum.
Exactly. But being able to shift your mind mathematically and still keep the understanding of what does this mean to the actions that I'm putting forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, what is the I'm doing this, what's my results? And it's not even like there's ratios in your mind that are being made. There's a balance that's being made. But at the same time, you're having to, it's not like life where it's like, I'm going to go chop an onion and now I'm going to chop, I'm chopping an apple. Yeah, I'm doing the same maneuver with the same tool in the same place for totally different results. That's not true in role-playing.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I am chopping an apple in D&D, I roll a D20 and have these things that I have to add to it to see if I hit an X, right?
Right.
I'm chopping an apple in City of Mist.
And what aspect?
How am I approaching the apple?
Yeah. How are you approaching the apple?
You know, what is your intended outcome with the apple? Okay.
Would you say you're using more of an earth chop or a fire chop?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Are you giving it all?
Or is this more of a void chop?
You know, it's the same result. Like,
Yeah,
nothing's
exactly.
different there. You know,
Can I spend a Benny to re-chop the apple?
exactly.
Yeah.
And things like that being thrown into it. So your brain has to make all these extra connections for that, and that adaptability and improv of being able to switch gears and still remember what you're doing at the core, I think is huge. I think that's huge.
That's a skill that I think one of the big ones that I have picked up on is a lot of it is it's kind of abstract thinking, I suppose.
Very much so. Very much so.
From the standpoint of being able to conceptualize the broader aspects of, like, okay, at the end of the day, we're still talking about kind of doing the same thing. You know, you're still trying to represent a character trying to accomplish a task in the scope of a story. But especially since we have moved into these, system spotlights once a month, I've gotten a big workout doing that. Used to be I only picked up a new game system every couple years, but we're doing it literally once a month now.
Mm-hmm.
And we roll into it, and you hand me... The first thing you do is you hand me the rule book, and you're like, all right, learn the dice. Like,
here you go. Enjoy yourself.
All right. Well, we know where I'm diving in. I'm diving in the storyteller section, but you are going to learn all of the mechanics.
Yeah, I'm just going to tear this half of the book out and enjoy yourself with this.
And the reason you do that is because I can do that in 15 minutes,
You just have a different way of looking at it.
But it's just, like I said, it's that abstract thinking skill that I have picked up from years of this, of just knowing, like, okay, I see what they're trying to accomplish with their dice, with their storytelling, and that's a super valuable skill. I can tell you exactly where I applied that recently.
Okay.
There was so Microsoft Access.
Oh, lordy.
It's an old database program.
Yes.
By Microsoft, obviously. Anyways.
Pre-SQL.
Yeah, pre-SQL, yeah.
Yes.
And one of the databases that I have to access at work that has a bunch of the old records in, that I very rarely have to, but occasionally have to search in this thing, is a Microsoft Access database. Now, when I took over my particular position, I did it basically after my predecessor had put in their 2-week notice. And I still had to accomplish my own job while this was getting done.
Yeah.
Everything moved very quickly, and I didn't get a lot of on-the-job training.
Oof.
And so
Pretty common
after my
everywhere,
predecessor
actually.
left and I picked up the job, there was a lot of like, okay, let's look over what she left me and try to figure out like what they were doing. Like most of it seemed pretty straightforward, but this Access database was just a mystery to us.
Yeah.
Because it was so archaic in the way that it was put together and we needed to do searches for it.
All right.
And the written notes were like way out of date and unclear to begin with.
Right.
And so I was basically given the task of like, here, you figure it out.
Yeah.
I had never touched Access
Nope.
before, and so I spent an afternoon on it, but it was all of that abstract thinking skill, looking at systems and how certain bits of information talk to certain other bits of information to accomplish a task, to pull a result from that. I like excitedly messaged my boss just after my lunch break, and it was like, I got it figured out. I did it. Look, this database here talks to this database here, which pulls these, and it cross-references those and dumps that into this database, which then cross-references this other one, and that's what gives you the result. And she's like, wow, you're really proud of yourself. Like, you're a lot more happy about grinding on a database for 4 hours than I thought you were going to be. And I'm like, no, this is great, dude. Give me more. Like,
Exactly. Yep. No, I love problem solving in that regard, and I think a lot of it has to do with gaming. I think one of the things that kind of fit along with that for me was that oftentimes I didn't have a lot of funding when I was young. It wasn't to say that my parents weren't doing okay, but we ran on a very tight budget.
Sure.
We were middle class in the tight sense. Like, we made it to there, and that's it. Like, and so, like, all of my gaming books I bought. Like, every one of my books were my books. I figured out the money, made it happen. Like, my first gaming book, I literally starved myself through lunches to get.
Oh, yeah, I remember you telling me, yeah.
And, because I really wanted it. And then everything else, like, I would go to the library and get stuff from there, and I would look at things, or I'd borrow from friends until I could get what I had. Which is one of the reasons why I still have all of my gaming books. It's part of what I have in my collection. But because of that, if I wanted to do something special in my games, I had to figure out how to do it a different way. I couldn't just buy a solution. I had to figure out. So, like, I would look at these people who had this amazing terrain that they bought that was this dungeon thing, and I'd go to the hobby shop, and it was like $300. And I was like, in 1980s money, that could have been $1,000 for all it was.
No, right? Man, screw that. Popsicle sticks and craft glue.
And
dollar acrylic paint.
Right, and some of that was still outside of my reach. Because I couldn't ask my mom to go to the hobby shop and buy things that weren't going to be for school.
Sure.
So I had to constantly work around everything. Mm-hmm. Well, because of that, and that working around, finding free things, making things out of nothing, working with, other, I know in Warhammer, it was one of the biggest things was, if you needed terrain, the world is your terrain. Like, grab a rock, put it on the table.
Yeah, it's called floor hammer.
Yeah, exactly.
Or pour hammer.
Pour hammer, yeah. I mean, that kind of thinking, but on a tabletop sense. Like, minis and everything else like that. Well, not only that, but hey, I want a cool map. All right, well, what do I need? Well, I need grid paper. Well, I don't have grid paper. I can get grid paper because I can use the back of wrapping paper. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can get some wrapping paper because I know where I can get a sheet of wrapping. And figuring out solutions around those things led me to a lot of my problem solving that I have in life. Like, there's not much software that I stop at. and I don't stop. I do. Because I have to come to a solution to get to the thing that my brain wants the most.
Yep.
And so I'll reverse engineer it until I can say, okay, what thing is going to work enough to get the job done to my acceptable levels? And through that, like, I've learned how to use Audacity. I've learned how to use mapping tools. I taught myself, Photoshop and GIMP. Like, I've done editing. There's so many things I've done. I've had to learn to make one thing work.
Oh yeah, I think the first time I did use Audacity was making audio stuff for my adventure game. Yeah,
but that's the thing is like, I need to make my voice sound like X.
Right.
Time to go digging until I can figure it out.
You
like,
just Google, like, how, what filter does this? Like, okay, well, you can just use this sort of filter, that sort of filter. Like, cool. What free program? Because I ain't shelling out money for this. Oh, well, hey, look, Audacity. Audacity's free.
And even before Audacity, like, I had to figure out that my dad had equipment for doing audio, so, like, adding reverb to things. And echo effect and tonal changes. I learned audio that way.
Yeah.
And so all of these things became like, it's nothing for me to set up an audio board now. It is. I don't even think about it. When someone gives me a problem, it's no longer like I don't know if I can do that. It's more along like, should I? Should I do this? Is it within frame? Like, I have to draw myself back from it. I actually have to check to see if it's something I should be doing or not.
Right. Am I using a cannon to kill a mosquito here?
Right. And sometimes it's like, hey, I'm going to give you some tools so you can do it yourself.
Sure.
But so many times, like, I've come back to that same feeling of, like, I can solve this because it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And that's always been the way it was. Like, in high school for me, it was that we lost our set director and our actual director going into my junior year and junior year, sophomore, one of the years, and we were doing Little Shop of Horrors. Well, nobody knew how to do the set, and in 2 nights, I built up an entire mock-up of how we could do the set in 3D. And handed it to the teacher directors and said, here's my idea for the set. She's like, great, you're the new set director. I'm going to give you a budget. I did not have anyone over me. I had parents helping on occasion, but I had to build my own set crew. I had the budget for building everything. And by God, if that set did not look amazing when I was done with it, I had shit spinning on that stage.
Right there, you got your first taste of corporate America.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you showed initiative and talent. We're going to exploit you now.
This looks reasonable. How much of a budget do you need? I was like, this? And I made it work.
Yeah, right on.
But at the same time, like, nothing stopped me.
Yeah.
And and that's empowering.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And I will say a chunk of that came from being empowered by having people around me who just accepted the designs and art and efforts that I put into things and seeing their joy come out of it.
Yeah, I think that's maybe another skill. I don't think we've got this jotted down here. But I think maybe down like the personal area here at the bottom of the list. Is just a kind of that aspect of personal confidence.
Oh, so much.
Of like not worrying so much about putting that foot forward, because you kind of start realizing, especially if you're an extraordinarily self-critical person like I am.
Oh yeah.
That people just appreciate the effort.
Mm-hmm.
They appreciate that someone else is making the effort and not them.
Mm-hmm.
But also that most of the time, the standards you think you hold yourself to, other people don't.
Right.
And that was definitely something that I got from tabletop role-playing, in that there are times, and there are still times, where I walk out of a game going, that was a disaster.
Yeah. I
didn't
had those.
accomplish any of my goals.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, my plot was off the rails. I felt like I was completely out of my element. I improv'd half of it. I had to look up 3 or 4 different rules instead of the typical, 0 to 1.
Yeah.
And I really just felt completely on my back foot the entire time.
Yeah.
What's the feedback from my players? Loved it. 10 of 10, no notes, best game you've ever run. Oh.
Shit.
Okay.
You still feel down about it.
You still feel down about it, but like, there's a certain sense of pride you can at least walk away from. It's a balm you can put on that burn.
Yeah.
That when you walk away and you take that time to think, like, okay, I'm being really, really self-critical, and I know several places I've screwed up, But ultimately, what is my goal here? My goal is to give an enjoyable time to my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Let me take one moment to look at their faces right now. Everybody is smiling and laughing.
Mm-hmm.
When I asked for feedback at the end of the night, I got, yeah, I guess the fight sequence is a little bit slow, but it was super fun.
Yeah.
And that was the only criticism that I got. Like, how do you, you can feel bad about that.
Oh, yeah.
But you need to acknowledge you're only doing it to yourself at that point.
Right.
You know?
And the more times that you do that, and you're in a comfortable situation where you can immediately reflect,
Yeah.
I think that it softens the bruise, you know?
Yeah.
One of my favorite memories that I have to this day about that is that there are two ways you can look at playing an instrument. One is that it is a pain. It is going to be a pain because you're going to be holding something and interacting with it enough that you will have calluses and parts of your body that will ache when you play it.
Yeah.
But as you play it more, your body adapts to the instrument. I played cello. I had a vibrating string literally against my fingers at all times. I had a bow that I had to hold a very specific way.
Very weird way,
It's a very awkward way of holding it. And in that, I ended up with... I remember cuts early as a child. I remember eventually those cuts getting sealed over and getting calluses and getting these burrs on my fingers that, like, I couldn't feel that skin. It was dead.
But I relate. I played trombone. Get well soon.
I'm not going to talk about what happened to your lips. No one's going to discuss that.
It's true.
But the point of the matter is that your body adapts to those things. You get used to it, and you start looking at those marks on yourself, and you're like, I made this.
Mm-hmm.
This shows progress. And as I got older, they're gone.
Yeah.
And there's a loss there.
Yeah, there's a part of you that's just like, oh, my
But I will
calluses are
say,
gone, yeah.
I still finger when I hear cellos in songs.
Yeah.
Like, I may not be exactly right, but I feel it.
Yep.
I can still feel the string.
Yep.
And I think gaming gives you that as well, that reverberation in your own mind of, I've been through this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I can move past it, or I can gracefully move through it.
I mean,
and I love that.
We do simulators for so many things. If you're learning to fly, if you're learning, like even combat and stuff like that, they do simulation and stuff like that. And it's funny because, like, in so many ways, just in our own minds, they've done studies that role playing, activates that deep sort of imagination. It activates the same sort of brains of, like, actual real experience does for you.
Well, it is a real experience.
It is a real experience, yeah. And no, I'm not saying
right.
That, I'm not in any way making the leap that, like, combat in D&D is the same as combat in real life. I would never do that. But, like, ultimately, at the end of the day, though, role-playing is a kind of reality simulator.
Mm-hmm.
It simulates a variety of different experiences. And so you role-play for long enough, you've had a variety of experiences. It becomes very seldom that you can get put in a sticky situation, be it a socially sticky situation, an emotionally sticky situation, or, sometimes even a conflict situation where you don't think back of, like, oh, yeah, this happened once in a story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even just that can give you a little bit of an edge on the on how things turn out.
Yeah. Nevin's got an interesting question I think fits into the personal section here a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
And that is, what kind of real-life skills would you advise to improve for TTRPGs?
So not what you get from it, but what you learn outside to bring to the table.
Yeah. I think whether you're a player or a storyteller, I think there's different aspects, definitely.
Yeah.
I think learn outside.
So
my
big answer for this is going to be interpersonal skills.
Okay.
Like big things that had a lot of crossover with me in a management position when I had a team.
You'd bring to a tabletop.
That I would bring to a tabletop.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Was kind of the how to manage people in general without, but with keeping in mind that these are people and not just assets, but being able to at least keep that sort of professional edge enough that you can keep them on task and keep them with acting within a professional boundaries, I suppose. Not that your table has to be rigid, formal attire affair or anything like that, but like keeping them on task.
Yeah.
Keeping them from getting too rowdy and getting making other players uncomfortable with how rowdy. Because look, we're an older gaming group. We don't really get rowdy anymore. But especially for a lot of like the beer and pretzels style games that sometimes the younger crowd still does and whatnot. People come to their game with a case of beer or maybe something else. And things can get a little out of hand.
Well, not only that, but I hear a lot of times, and I'm hearing this from a lot of newer gamers, they don't play for more than 90 minutes. Like, that's their session.
How do you accomplish anything?
I'm of the same mind frame, but at the same time, they'll play for 90 minutes, and then they'll go do something else.
Yeah.
Like, so that they're still hanging out, But they'll maybe get through a scene or two, but they also play more often.
Well, that's true, yeah. I mean, if you're playing every week, I suppose you can get
or
away
a
with
couple
something.
times a week in some cases.
Yeah.
Like, college players, from what I've heard more recently, played between 3 and 4 times a week. And, like, because they can only do shorter sessions.
Yeah, but like an hour at a time, though.
Yeah, you're squeezing it in, before you go to the bar, kind of a thing. Or maybe you're at the bar, which is a huge thing now, is that apparently a lot of distilleries and stuff like that, like, people will just be playing D&D in the corner, and people will be watching them. And that's a thing. Like, that kind of blows my mind in a way. But at the same regard, I think what you're saying in that is keeping focus, knowing when your focus breaks happen, and being able to allow for them, no different than in a meeting.
Yeah, sure.
Like, nobody should have meetings that are more than an hour long without some kind of a break in it.
But I think in addition to that, though, there's that empathy component.
Very much so.
Like, look, we're still talking about people. Like, it's one thing to keep people on task, but like, if somebody is struggling, your response to that shouldn't be like, whippings will continue until morale increases.
Yes.
It's hey, I see you're struggling. You're my friend. What's going on? Is there something I can help you with? Should we just not play right now? Is it, do you need something to help accommodate you?
Right.
And finding that way that you can not only help your friend, but help them also then get back on task so that the group can continue to accomplish their goal. That's a management technique.
Yeah, it's true cooperation, yeah.
But it's basically just a lot of communication and interpersonal skills.
Yeah. I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound funny as hell to say this, but a real-life skill that I think you can bring into TTRPGs is cooperative cleanup.
Okay.
You don't go into your office, if you're in a corporate sense or into a group sense, and destroy it and leave it in a destroyed state, right? There's a cycle.
Yeah.
That you have to go through. Like, some people are the morning crew who have to set things up and get things going, and then there's a night crew that, does a thing. But there's a constant level of cleanup and effort, whether it's your till, whether it's your workstation, whether it's your queue, whatever. That is part of what we do within a business sense or within a activity sense. Even if you're just a hobby blacksmith, right, that works with other ones, or in a setting, or a glass worker or something like that. There's something to be said about that, putting it, bringing things out, putting it together, and taking it apart. I think that is something that desperately needs to be brought into the TTRPG sense, in the sense that people need to treat it less like a party where there's a host who's managing everyone.
Yes.
And more of a community thing where it's like hey, we're all doing this.
I agree.
We need to do this together.
I agree.
And I think that was lost even when we were as kids. Mm-hmm. And I think it's still lost today, that's not there, that aspect is not there. And it's a level of respect, I think, at some point, but also it's also that you think it's this type of thing, and that's how it has to, we're just going to a party.
Right.
So I would say that's definitely a life skill that needs to be brought in. I think the other one that comes in specifically for storytellers is if you can bring in from your own life experiences an aspect of a core love. Mm-hmm. One of my core loves is figuring things out. Mm-hmm. I love dismantling and putting things together, and bringing that into gaming helped me create worlds and complex situations, and I'm very good at it. And I work with other people on it, and I think that is something that needs to be shared.
Yeah.
Whatever your love is, and for some people it's poetry, for some people it's art, for some people it's being able to sing. And like, there was a really neat thing that I read, and I brought it up with you before, where a young girl was stuttering, but she could sing perfectly fine. And so during sessions of combat, she, as her bard, would sing during combat lightly.
Yeah.
But like, she would basically serenade the group her anthems and things like that. And they thought it was great, but it was bringing her love to the game that brought joy. Because when you bring that side of yourself into and expose it, you're doing something that you need to. You're showing an aspect of yourself to others. You're blossoming something out in a comfortable space.
I'm hearing every single time that I've been stressing out about meeting my deadlines, getting my stuff together for my game, and you have told me, you don't have to have painted minis in terrain.
You already do.
And I look at you and go, but I'm gonna.
You will.
I mean, I'm gonna.
You're
right?
gonna bring some art to the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's because that's my thing. You know?
That's your jam. That's your love. And I think that's something that we can definitely bring from the outside, from real life, in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And share.
Whatever it is you love, bring your passion.
Bring your passion with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw one more thing out there, because we have microphones and we have time and we can do this.
Let's do it.
Righteous V just threw this in.
Okay.
And it's a question. And, like, it's not in our normal question stuff. It sits
it's just in the general chat on the Discord. Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm going to totally throw this on the table, because it's worth it. Hey, everybody. So you guys get a feel of what our Discord's like, too. Hey, everybody. I'm still prepping for my first campaign. We're all new to TTRPGs. Wow, okay. Good luck, Righteous. So one of my players is an orphan who doesn't know his parents, and the other has been raised by two men of no known relation. She also doesn't know her own true parents. So two players, two different players, who are both orphans, I guess. One is a tiefling, and the other is a half-elf. I was thinking about making them siblings, possibly twins, separated in their infancy. My question is, should I discuss this with them? If it is your first, my first instinct, you are playing with character backgrounds.
Yeah.
They may not be comfortable with this.
Yeah.
So, if it was me, in the history that of dealing with situations very close to this in games that I've ran, I've seen success and I've seen utter and total failure on my part, where people just did not like that I took that agency from them and gave them something else, and they ground so hard against it that it ruined the game. So I will say, don't roll those dice.
Don't roll those dice, or if you do want to roll those dice, sit both of them down and have that talk with them.
100%.
And
don't do it independently with one or the other, because one may say that sounds like a great idea, and the other person might be against it, and they're going to try and sell it to them.
Get their buy-in. Get their buy-in from them both together at the same time. Because if one says it may turn out, and we've done this before too,
100%.
where hey, what if, what if instead of being twins, we're blah, 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 something else instead, and the other person goes, oh, that's a great idea, and what if, and they start, bouncing off each other.
Now they've got bonds, which is great.
Now you not only have buy-in, but you've got enthusiasm and ideas from them both.
Yeah.
Or, like you said, they might hate it.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is especially if, and I'm reading into one other aspect of what you're writing here, this is your first campaign.
Yeah.
Most of these people are new to TTRPGs. Don't play with backgrounds. Don't roll that into your story.
I agree.
Set that off. Keep this as keep your steak and potatoes story steak and potatoes.
Yes.
Don't try and make a souffle because your players like souffles on top of it. Don't do that. Don't hurt yourself with that. Stick with your steak and potatoes. Your players are still going to love it, and you will learn so much more by doing less.
Yes.
I've made these mistakes. Learn from Sara and I. We've made epic campaigns early on, and so many things we should have learned that we didn't learn because we threw too many elements into the fire simultaneously.
Yep. And every element you throw in is a point of failure, is a potential point of failure. And so I think, especially since you're all new and this is your first campaign, the best thing you can do is set yourself up for success. Okay? Be as plain and straightforward. I don't want to say boring, but like everything but boring.
The players will make it enjoyable.
When we say steak and potatoes, like, okay, you are an adventuring group. You all know each other. You've been hired to go to these ruins, fight some goblins, get the MacGuffin, bring it home. Campaign over.
Yep.
Make it as simple as possible so you can set yourself up to have a big W on the scoreboard at the end of the day. And I say this for morale purposes.
Yep.
Okay? This is your first experience role-playing.
Yep.
This is their first experience role-playing.
Mm-hmm.
The more chance you have of setting yourself up for success and finishing the campaign and getting through several game sessions with a successful arc of, we fought the bad guy, we got the MacGuffin, we won the day. Mm-hmm. That's it. The more good memories, good experiences, everybody's going to walk away with this. You've got time.
Yeah.
You've got all the time in the world. You can make your next one more complicated. But for your first attempt, make it... Because if you fail, if you overcomplicate things and things fall apart and you stress yourself out and you burn yourself out after 3 months trying to juggle, 15 different plot elements, etc., 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 you're going to come away from this thinking that storytelling is super hard and you're not going to enjoy it.
Right.
And your players will read that as well, and your players will not enjoy your game.
Nor may they sit in your chair.
And... Well, first off, you're destroying any chance that they themselves will ever get behind the screen. But also, I know a lot of people who have had a bad first experience with tabletop role-playing games and didn't walk away with that one particular game sucked. They walked away with tabletop games suck.
Yeah.
And they are not for me, and I will not enjoy them.
Yeah.
So, do everything in your power to keep things smooth, simple, streamlined, and hand yourself a big fat W at the end of the day, pat yourself on the back, pat everybody else on the back, and everybody's going to be happy.
Yeah. A simple story. Let your players generate the drama and chaos. And they will. Oh, they will.
And as the resident steak and potato chef,
which you are.
I can tell you, you can keep doing that, and people will continue to have fun.
Yes.
It's fine. You really don't have to rewrite Game of Thrones every campaign.
Definitely not.
But just making your world reactive, making your NPCs lively, and making it super fun to go get that MacGuffin.
Yeah. Adding an aspect when you're comfortable to add an aspect, or when requested to add an aspect, is so much easier and nicer, because again, you're giving them that one more step.
Mm-hmm.
That one more thing, and that's often all they need.
Yep.
Because you're letting them... So yeah, that's going to be it. Don't do it to yourself. Let them figure it out, and then give them opportunities that are outside of the campaign to explore what they want to explore within their characters.
Yeah.
Take the breath for yourself.
Yeah.
Give them a bar sequence where they say, they figure out that maybe they're related. Oh, maybe they're not. You don't know. You don't care. Because you're running the story.
Yep.
You know, you can throw false promises all you want that have nothing to do with the plot. And enjoy that aspect of it, by all means. Take your time with it. Take that effort to step to the side and just run a good, clean campaign.
Absolutely.
And know when it's over. Oh, God, know when it's over. So,
all right, we're wrapping up for the night?
Yeah, let's talk. All right, so next week's topic, we're doing agency within organizations. So, like, your players are all part of the Musketeers, or your players are all part of a heroes organization.
Or a megacorp, or something like that, yeah.
So how do you balance that structure?
How do you have characters that take orders and have to follow somebody else's plan, typically an NPC, but still have agency and free will enough to have an adventure and feel like you're playing a character and not just a cog in a wheel that's already turning.
And this is actually one of our contributors had put this in a while ago.
Thank you for this idea, Knox in the Box.
We love it.
Absolutely. This one goes out to you.
So,
all right. Well, I think you can find us on Twitter at st_conclave, on Instagram at st_conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And join us up on our Discord. We may just see your question pop up in our general chat and answer it on the air. If not, shoot us some questions in the questions channel. Discuss things with our other storytellers on there. It's great. You can find that link on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members who help us out every single month, especially our name members who often give us great suggestions, like Knox in the Box, Subjet, Sam, The Arcane Asylum, Spark Emotion, Vedran, Hulavu, and Sean. We really appreciate all your support. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find them at patreon.com/Arcane Anthems. Our intro music is Beyond the Warrior by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find them at freemusicarchive.org.
And a big shout out as always to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for loving and supporting us. All of our friends who've sat our tables to give you these great stories to share with you over the years. And you, every single one of our listeners. We love you guys so much.
Good night.